Hi,
What's
welcome
up?
back to the Campfire Chat podcast.
Welcome back.
It's been a few weeks.
Little holiday break.
Yeah,
That's how it's
we
got to be.
were,
Get some family time in. All that.
well, of course, just super busy. I wasn't gonna try to cram it in somewhere, schedule all this, and it is a lot of work with the research and everything, but
For sure.
yeah, I'm excited to jump into this week's episode because we're going to be talking about the Jeffrey Epstein case and Balenciaga and kind of how that kind of thing intertwines. Um, so yeah, it's a lot. But I feel like
Sure.
before we get into all this, I kind of want to talk about conspiracy theories in general real quick. Because when I was looking into even the Balenciaga scandal, and I was looking on some of the bigger news outlets, and they were calling it an alt-right conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it was just not
the
true.
Balenciaga thing,
Not true
which
at all.
is it's so wild, and it really kind of emphasizes to me that a lot of times things are labeled as alt-right things or as conspiracy theories, it's like a crazy thing.
Yeah.
It's just all these crazy people's coming up with these theories. But if you look at a lot of these things, if you look into things with an open mind, with a healthy amount of skepticism.
Yeah, grain of salt kind of idea.
Yeah, and I think it's just skepticism is very important, and I think as much as it's important to be skeptical when you're hearing about conspiracy theories, it's also important to be skeptical of anything else, because there are conspiracies going on, and I mean, we can even see that from the base level, just how the government works. There's lobbyists, and those lobbyists give a lot of funding to the politicians and the government. So there is.
That's pretty hard to find one that's not doing that.
Yeah, and
it's pretty rare, I think.
And you can see motive there. How are you going to 100% trust that? Oh yeah, these things are crazy conspiracy theories. You shouldn't even look into them. When there is a motive to lie about it, and there's also a motive to make people look crazy who theorize about these things. Because really, conspiracies are in the base level of our government. Lobbying, that is kind of a conspiracy because you are conspiring to make a deal to make both people money not in the interest of the people necessarily. It's in the interest of the money. So I think
Well, yeah, the biggest
obviously,
conspiracy is them making the word conspiracy seem like it's like a fake, or it's like a legend, or like a fake. It's like every time it's like a fake thing, or it's like a made up thing, or it's like there's not enough facts behind it backing it, right? It's not factual or something or it's like pseudoscience or something like that, but a conspiracy, I'm pretty sure, doesn't even mean something wrong. It just means something
a conspiracy
it's just like a theory.
means conspiracy theory is a different thing.
A definition.
If we go into it, the definition of a conspiracy is essentially people making a plan together to do something that can be harmful. So a lot of that, in the government, is these oil companies are making deals with
or tobacco companies, or
with politicians to make them money, and it can be harmful because it's not in the interest. It's not in the best interest of the people that it's supposed to be for. So that is a conspiracy. That's not a theory. That is a conspiracy. And so conspiracy theories are really just people looking into things, drawing different connections, and coming to conclusions about what conspiracies might be going on. And there are a lot of conspiracies going on that we can see, and you can see it in the Jeffrey Epstein case. This, a few years ago, or maybe not even a few years ago, maybe a while ago, would have been a crazy conspiracy theory But now we see that all of these things really did happen, and they involve some of the elites that a lot of people looked up to and thought were great people before all this stuff came out. And still not all of it has come out because it's like there's a lot of stuff being covered up. So
I feel like the true crime kind of genre with like the serial killer and stuff like that has been like super popular, and like Netflix, all like those different like dramas about like true crime where it's like about a specific family or specific case. And then Jeffrey Epstein was kind of like, it was too popular like on the internet. They had to like, they made it, but it was like, I don't think they were trying to bring in that it was like conspiracy, like, it was like him doing that shit, but like
yeah,
but all like, since everybody's involved in it, it kind of just got brought to light. And I feel like that forced like a lot of people's eyes open, because when they hear conspiracy, they're like, oh yeah, they don't want to, like, they'll believe in like, or watch like, oh, like just like a simple like murder or something like that, or like, but they don't want to believe that there's an overarching group of people that are trying to like do something for their like own will, or like whatever their purpose they deem worthy is, like. And that's why people like don't see it well. I feel like it kind of clouds their judgment, because they're like, that's too scary for most people to like even realize or try to even conceptualize that it's happening, because it's such a crazy thing.
And I think that
For
like
most regular
money
people.
can diminish people's morals. We know that. Like we see that all around us all the time. But I feel like it's the same people who are saying like eat the rich and all of these things that are saying that conspiracy theories are crazy and stuff. Which is why like I think it's ridiculous that it's labeled as an alt-right thing, because people are really like, out of any group, what people choose to label themselves by or identify as, a lot of these people are saying the same things, but these buzzwords like conspiracy theorist are thrown around and kind of force people to be a little bit more closed-minded towards things. But there's this kind of false narrative that people who believe conspiracy theories, or at least entertain them, are the closed-minded ones, or are not skeptical enough, when in reality it can go that way, where people will just jump
well, that's
right
like people
on
just
it.
believing every little conspiracy. And I think there's also like the government or whoever or whatever is like is making conspiracy, like fake ones, to pollute certain like things,
And
like.
people like, there are
And people
who
will eat
really
that up,
believe
right?
it.
They'll like eat that up. They'll hear like a conspiracy, and the government will give like a bunch of proof, or like whoever, and then so it'll kind of cloud that space and make it seem more like it's
like just so
more crazy. Yeah, because then they'll be like, oh, if we just add more to this and more wood to the fire, then it'll just like keep going and get out of hand, instead of just like this little one that's always tending right there.
Or like QAnon, and like there are a lot of alt-right groups, don't get me wrong, that believe in like a ton of conspiracy theories, and they think that every single person in power, every single celebrity are all involved in this type of thing. And like that's taking it a little bit too far too. That's just drawing like a huge conclusion from this. But
I just don't think you
really,
can say either like something's definite no matter what. Either
you
way.
have to just
The
like
people that are like, oh, it's like this and this how it is. It's like, well, yeah, you might like. There's certain things that we can say yes if it like correlates with mainstream, and then it also is just like, maybe it's just like a new thought idea, or like new idea or something like that, where it's like a science thing, or like, I don't know, where it's not like just like, oh, like these people are lizards or some shit like that.
Yeah, like just random videos and stuff they see online that they don't really dig deeper into.
Now.
But I really think that it just goes both ways. Like there's people who are fully like, we can trust our government, the government is there to help us, to protect us, all of these things. They think that all of these elite people are looking out for the betterment of society and they can trust them. And then there's also people who think that everybody that you see who's involved in the government or any of this are Satanists and they're getting sacrifices and all of this. But you gotta understand, like, it's not that black and white. You gotta just find the gray area and be able to say, like, what people actually have evidence against them and what people are we just drawing that conclusion because of their position. But Yeah, it's a lot, and I mean, a lot of people just go down the rabbit hole too, and kind of get enthralled in that, and that becomes like their whole life, and it's kind of this huge source of anxiety and everything. But then there's just moderate people like us who look into these things and say, okay, that's all of the actual hard evidence that we have of this, and here are the connections we can draw from that. I think that it is this way, or that makes sense. But anyways, shall we get into Jeffrey Epstein?
Jump right into it.
So, Jeffrey Epstein was born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. And he was always a smart guy and a social butterfly throughout his early life. But he was a little bit introverted, but everybody really liked him. And after high school, he attended university to study math and physics, but he eventually dropped out. But he did end up teaching math and physics at a school in the 1970s, and when he was in his 20s, until a father of one of his students got him in touch with a senior member of an investment firm called Bear Stearns, where he worked as a partner for 4 years, until he started his own firm called J. Epstein & Co., where he managed assets of clients worth over $1 billion, and this was instantly a huge success. But nobody really knew exactly where he got his money from. Like, it was always a little bit unclear, and there was a lot of times where people would ask him and he would say different things. So it was very murky, and like it very well could have just been him sex trafficking at this point as well, just from the start to make a lot of money. Because it didn't really make sense how much money he had.
He could have just been Ponzi scheming too, just like being like, hey, I want you to invest in this, and then uses that guy's money to build another project, or like he just used like the next person's money, and make like a little, just enough to survive off like each one.
Yeah.
And you're always like in debt, so it like doesn't really work.
Yeah, I think he actually was involved in a couple of Ponzi schemes in his time working. But in the late 1980s, Jeffrey and Ghislaine Maxwell, or Ghislaine, or however, I get so confused.
Ghislaine.
Yeah, met and they started dating. And after his business started to take off, he bought a house in Florida, where he stayed a lot of the time. But he had a house in Florida, New Mexico, New York City, and Paris, France, and then obviously his private islands.
Some real estate investments for sure.
Yeah, he actually owned I think it's the biggest house in New York, or the most expensive house in New York.
Shit, we bought that after nobody had that.
Yeah.
They just tear it down. They're like, fuck this shit.
Yeah.
Burn it.
And, but for tax reasons, he ran his business from St. Thomas, which was in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
That's
a lot of people do that. Yeah, I think
taxes get you good.
Yeah, but then in 1992, he bought the island close by called Little St. James.
That's the one, the pedo island for sure.
Yeah. So, and he actually owned a Boeing.
Little St. James, bro, like.
Yeah.
You heard the name, he was like, I don't need, say less.
Yeah. But he actually
I'm invested in this.
He owned a Boeing 727 as well.
Oh, yeah, to bring everybody there.
Jet. So, and like, he also like operated regular flights. Like, he would just fly out like random people all the time. He wasn't a pilot.
Oh, no, you're just saying, he would just have parties.
Yeah, like. I was reading some things about how, like, he would, like, with Donald Trump, they would just fly to, like, business meetings and stuff, like, all over the place in his plane. But, speaking of Donald Trump, he became very close friends with a lot of elites, including Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Harvey Weinstein, Prince Andrew, just to name a few. And the entire list is very shocking, but you can access most of the flight logs for his private plane online. They're just unredacted, so you can find them on like actual government pages. But back in Palm Beach, Florida, Jeffrey and Ghislaine were running an elaborate underage sex trafficking ring, using almost MLM or pyramid scheme methods to recruit girls from high school and paying these girls to be assaulted by Jeffrey and paying other girls, usually who were in dire situations, to bring girls to him. So how it kind of worked.
He sends out the ones they already have trained and that are like more broken down, that he can't really like sell for good money anymore, probably kind of shit, and just gets them to go and get the new girls.
How it would like work, like he wasn't selling them to anyone else. What was basically happening was Ghislaine, I think, recruited the first girls because she was very like outgoing. She was very funny and smart. People said.
Oh, just like for prostitution.
Nice. Yeah. So what would happen was he would get these girls to come to his house to give him a massage. And so these girls would just be like, oh yeah, there's like an old man, he'll pay you $300 to give him a massage. And a lot of these girls...
Well, of course, I feel like they know off the bat that it's not just a massage.
Yeah. And so there's Palm Beach, Florida, and then off the coast, there was like West Palm Beach, I think it was called. But so the one part was extremely wealthy, and then you cross the bridge and it's not very wealthy. It's like working class people or poor people. So he would recruit girls from the high school there, and a lot of them were very broke or in like bad living situations. And so he would get these girls to come give him a massage where he would like assault them. Like they would actually give him a massage. It was kind of weird how the whole thing worked. Yeah, and then...
But they videotaped them or some shit. Or like it stepped up after every time. They kind of like, right? They kind of like find who's the good one and like who's no good one, who's like not good at it, right? Or
and what they would do is like
groom them, kind of.
Yeah, and the girls would be told that like if they brought other people, he would pay them like $100 per person that he brought to him, which is how like an MLM works. It's like, oh, if you get new customers, we'll pay you for some of those customers, and the same thing for those people. So it's this whole pyramid scheme, and like you could keep going. Like the police station was saying that it was like they couldn't even keep going after a certain point because there was already like 60 people who were involved in this, and each person brought different people. And a lot of it, like there was like a lot of 14-year-old girls. At least they got a lot of witnesses and
stuff like that, though.
Yeah. But there was a lot of 14-year-old girls, 15, 16. Some of them weren't underage. Some of them were just like late teens, early 20s. But he would still manipulate them in a certain way. A lot of times he would say that he could help them somehow in their career. Like, I have these connections to this person and that person, and I can get you into this school, and I can pay for this trip for you to help your career.
Like sugar daddy shit.
Yeah, so a lot of it was that, but he would a lot of times like lure them onto his properties and then kind of put them in a situation where they weren't able to leave, and then would just like horrifically assault them. And some people just describe like he was making like a crazy face while like doing everything, and they were just terrified. But a lot of times, like, they kept going back because they were in such dire situations and they needed the money. So it was just like, am I going to be homeless and sleep on the streets tonight, or am I going to go get $300?
I guess so.
Like...
Yeah, there's in America, there's going to be that. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And especially, like, if he's somewhere next to kind of a more broke area. But... yeah, I mean, if you want to hear more of the details of kind of their own experiences with this, definitely watch the documentary because it is a good documentary. I wish they'd get more into the other high-profile people who were involved in this, but the victims were very strong and they, you know, they're acting appropriately. They're getting lawyers. They're speaking out about this very well. A lot of them are very eloquent. But he kind of seemed to have favorites from this ring, though. So certain girls traveled with him in G's Lane, and their celebrity and elite guests, usually with promises of connections from these trips. So a lot of times the girls would go to the private islands, and there's one of the men who worked on the private islands. He was like somebody that would do the like the signal, like the telephone signal.
Right, like flying
go there.
yeah.
Yeah, he said that he would just see like
or something.
Yeah, I think
so. You're saying like he's like the repairman.
Yeah, like you just repair and like maintain the telephone tower or whatever that they had there. And he said that he would just like go onto this island and you would just see these girls running around on the beach naked, and like Bill Gates was just like in the pool with them all the time. Like it was just weird shit. Just super weird.
Of course, yeah. Bill.
And like Prince Andrew, that's the one that for whatever reason, like a lot of people know about the Prince Andrew one.
Mm-hmm.
I think just because there was a famous photo leaked with him and a girl.
Yeah.
But I don't know why nobody talks about how Bill Gates was involved in this. Like, it's wild, and he was one of the like most common names on the flight log. So Bill Gates was like involved in this shit. Yeah, and then Donald Trump made statements like before all of this stuff went down. It was like, Jeffrey Epstein is a great guy. I've known him for so long. And then as soon as this stuff comes out, he's like, oh, I've never been on a plane with him or anything with him.
Sure. Yeah, it's right.
It's so, yeah. There was a lot of very powerful people. And we will get into that connection between him and Balenciaga as well, because they are tied together here. So, in 2005, though, he was reported to the police by a parent of a girl who actually just told her mom about how this other girl was, like, telling her that, oh, if you go massage this old man, he'll give you $300. So
finally got out.
Yeah, so this girl told her mom, because she's like, oh, this is really weird, like, what's going on here? And the mom called the police, and that's what awoke this investigation.
Right, because they started talking to all the girls, and they were like, what the fuck? Like, 100 girls they probably had, and they're like, Jesus Christ, this is like, bigger than they thought.
It just kept branching. Like, it was crazy. But, so, he was reported to the police, and he was actually arrested and charged with soliciting a prostitute and procuring a minor for prostitution. But he had some connections to prosecutors and ended up only serving 13 months in jail. And this 13 months in jail was not your typical 13 months in jail.
Was he on house arrest or something, too?
I think for a little bit after, but while he was in jail, he had a private wing, and the doors were unlocked, so he could come and go as he pleased. He was able to go to work every day for 12 hours, even though he didn't, like, go to work because he didn't have, like, an office. So he was able to leave for 12 hours a day.
Oh, leave?
Yeah, he could leave the jail for 12 hours
like some
a
Pablo
day
Escobar shit.
And come back. And apparently, they got him a new TV so he
Surprise!
He had like a living room.
Bill Gates is like, this is the brand new one from Microsoft.
Yeah, they literally got him a new TV. They put it in like a separate room so he could open the door whenever he wanted and go watch TV or whatever. He basically could do whatever he wanted. That honestly does not seem bad.
Not a prisoner.
It's basically free rent.
It's not even he's not a prisoner. Like, if he can come and go as he please, he's not a prisoner, right? Like,
yeah. And, like, I've heard of other people doing that, like, where you can leave on, like, a work permit, but it's usually not that you can leave for, like, 12 hours a day.
I didn't even know that was a thing, that you could leave on a work permit from jail. What's the point of being in jail, then?
That happened to, I don't know if I should, one of my old employers, who I think you can probably assume, was on that. Yeah. Was on that. So, it's a thing, but, I mean, his situation was weird. But there was actually Vanity Fair kind of caught wind. They heard about Jeffrey Epstein. And it was a little bit before this, but they'd heard about Jeffrey Epstein and they were just curious because they were like, how does this guy have all this money and he's seen with all these celebrities? Like, who is this guy? So they started kind of looking into him. They wanted to interview him. And while this woman was like looking into, the people around him and stuff like that to kind of get a grasp of who he was before she interviewed him, she was hearing from people, actual victims, like as she was interviewing people were coming forward saying, oh yeah, he R-worded my sister and he like threatened me and all of these things. And this woman was looking into it, and he caught wind that they were looking into this stuff, and he left like a cat's head on his driveway, like mob
message.
Style.
Yeah. Like a horse's head in the bed.
Yeah, like it was weird. So he was literally using mob-like methods to silence people. But there actually did end up being 25 different cases against him from 2005 to recent times where obviously he killed himself.
No, Epstein did not kill himself.
But let's get into that. But on to the... I don't know if I'm allowed to say suicide on YouTube. Say the unaliving. But so he was found on July 23rd at 1:30 a.m. semi-conscious and injured with marks around his neck. And he had a cellmate, and his cellmate was actually a policeman who was arrested for killing 4 people. So, and he said that his cellmate attacked him after they found him like this. But it was ruled as a suicide attempt. So he was placed on a suicide watch, meaning he would now be alone in his cell, and he would be checked on by guards every 30 minutes after this. Which is weird that they put him on that, because he was saying that he was strangled, and that's really the only thing that could have happened.
Yeah, like him strangling himself. How would that work? But...
Yeah, he couldn't strangle himself.
Yeah.
So it was obviously someone else, but for some reason they thought it was a suicide attempt.
Just labeled it as that, yeah.
Yeah, but 6 days later, he was found dead with similar injuries, and this night, apparently, the guards just decided not to follow the regular procedures and check on him every 30 minutes, which was just standard for suicide watch.
There's cameras in his room too, or something like that. Yeah, like the cameras were off.
Yeah, the whole thing is just so weird, and yeah. So I don't think. Yeah, obviously, he didn't kill himself. Because they said it was he wrapped a cord around his neck and jumped off of the top.
No, it was definitely one of the people who didn't want everything coming out in a court case, the extreme details. Because this guy is the type of guy to save his own hide kind of shit, it seems like.
And they said that he was in good spirits before this happened. He wasn't super depressed or anything. He was fine, he was confident, he thought he was gonna get away with it.
Yeah, he was gonna get out. They're like, nah, this one has to go to court because he got too much publicity. So they're like, you can't go to court for all the elites.
Yeah, and it only makes sense because there's all of these super powerful people, and that if they're questioning him and they're going to subpoena him, he has to share the names of those people.
Mm-hmm.
That's just so obviously people don't want this to come out. Donald Trump, Bill Gates. All of these people that are so powerful and rich. Yes, the Clintons, what the hell is even going on with that? And it's weird because it appears that Donald Trump and Bill Clinton were there at the same time.
Well, the Clintons and the Trumps were friends before their whole election against each other.
Yeah, which obviously in the election too, that whole thing was faked. And they were kind of on the same team anyways, because why would... if they're so close with each other and they're going to
You don't know
turn
that for
on each other
sure.
like that. I don't, but like it makes it kind of suspicious if they're all hoity-toity going to this island together.
Yeah, for sure.
It's weird. But on to the Balenciaga situation.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, while I was researching this, people switched up so quickly. I was getting most of my info from like Twitter or TikTok, but when you go to these mainstream websites, a lot of them label this an alt-right conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Just so insane to me because I have not seen one alt-right person talking about this situation. Like, I just haven't seen that. Obviously, I'm not looking at like
Right,
alt-right
for sure.
things, but like it's literally not. But what happened was, if y'all are not familiar with this situation, if you are not familiar with the Balenciaga situation, they dropped a campaign for their new objects collection in November featuring children holding teddy bears in bondage gear. And not just that, there's a lot of satanic references surrounding them in the children's drawings in the background. There's satanic references. And the setup are very similar to satanic altars. Like, there's all of these objects around them. And in some of them, you can see, like, it's very similar.
We'll put some pictures up of it.
Yeah, it's very similar to satanic ritual. And I want to talk about that a little bit because the Church of Satan has been doing a lot of things that to lure people in, and it's wrong. It's a lot of lies going on. But and then people then looked back at previous but recent campaigns and found that the books in the background were about famous pedophiles, and the paperwork on the desks inside photos were of court cases surrounding pedophilia, molestation, and child pornography.
Wow, that they could just like include that in there and think nobody's gonna pick up on it. And, like, how many times has that been done before? Like, even more just subtly done, and like nobody picks up on it, but it's like subconsciously there, or just like what's the point of putting that in? And like when you're designing a set, like they pull up, it's empty. Like they're not just like walking into an office and it's like, okay, you stand here. It's like, no, like they're designing that set in that room. Somebody's organizing that all, and it's like, and then somebody's going through everything. Yeah, somebody's making that stuff, and like, so a lot of people are seeing this and understanding what they're doing. Like, there's no way you're doing it, and like sometimes that happens with humans. Like, you just like complicit in the system. You don't really realize what you're doing is harmful. But like, I think it's like kind of ridiculous that like set designers or whatever wouldn't pick up on this, or that they purposely didn't do it. Because there's no way it's an accident. No way. The
photographer too, because the photographer who shot this campaign actually had been doing a series where he took photos of kids around the world and their toys to kind of show the different classes of the world, just the different how privileged kids are around the world. So he would take pictures of kids standing in the room with all of their toys set up around them. And so he got asked to shoot this collection for Balenciaga, and he did not know that it was like going to be what it was with the kids and all the stuff around them.
Claims, I guess.
He just showed up and they were like, yeah, you need to shoot this. And he felt weird about it and all this, but he was also like kind of trusted them because he's like, it's a big brand, like I don't know, his judgment was maybe a little foggy, but it's definitely not his fault because they were offering to pay him like a lot of money to take these photos, like years and years of salary to take these photos. So he just shot them. He already agreed to it. So he's like, okay, I already agreed to do this. They're paying me a lot of money. He shot them anyways. And he was getting death threats and stuff. But like, obviously it wasn't him planning it. He just came there to shoot the campaign. And obviously those photos are going to be approved by executives of the company. Like, that's their job, is to approve things like this. They're obviously going to look at it. There's photo editors who are obviously retouching everything in these photos to make them look perfect. There's so many people that this goes through, and
no way it's accidental. Definitely planned. It's like
Yeah, and they were like blaming it on some sort of like the production agency, but it's like even if it was their idea, they still approved it and put it to print and put it out there.
They still kept going. Nobody was like, nah, cancel the project halfway through.
And I very much doubt that another agency planned their own campaign photo shoot.
Yeah.
Like
Maybe it could be outsourced,
the whole
but
brand.
it's like it's like they still had to design the clothes and everything for the kids to be wearing, and like the bondage for the teddy bears.
Yeah, and but also people dug up paintings by Lata Volkova posted to her Instagram depicting satanic rituals involving children. You can see children covered in blood. She worked for Balenciaga until 2017 officially, but you don't know the influence she still has. Like, you don't know if she's not
for sure
still involved, or at least it shows the type of people who are involved in this company. And so on that note, I want to quickly talk about like the Satanic Church and what's going on with that. Is that when Roe versus Wade was overturned, I saw a lot of media put out by the Satanic Church who were saying that abortion could be like a religious ritual to them, so that would have them exempt by the rules. So basically, people who want an abortion can go to the Satanic Church and legally get it done. Well, that's not true. That's not how it works. And they were spreading that false narrative to get people to join the Satanic Church, because they were like, you have to have joined it like this long before to participate in this and get exempt for it.
And then you gotta go to 20 meetings to get your stamp after each meeting in blood.
Yeah, and then you can get an abortion if like 6 months later, and it's weird that they like did this whole campaign anyways. And I see a lot of people who are Satanists depicting it in a certain way, and I don't know if I can trust it, because a lot of people are like, oh, it's just about like love and peace and being kind to others, and it's not about
like the
Satan.
Photo shoot?
No, about Satanism in general, the Satanic Church.
Right.
It's not about Satan, it's just about loving other people and being kind and all of these things.
Right.
I don't know if I trust that, honestly.
Yeah, they're lying.
I mean, it's the Church of Satan. Like, I mean, Christianity, it's the Church of Jesus, and maybe it's not all about Jesus, but that's like a core part of the religion. They like believe in that.
Yeah, I don't know. There definitely could be different variables to it. I don't know. And there's different ways to see it and ways to approach each religion, and ways to absorb the information.
Do you think there's any Christians who don't believe in Jesus?
No.
And that's what these people are saying.
But Christians believe in Satan, though, and Satanists believe in God and Jesus.
But there's Satanists saying that they don't believe in Satan.
Yeah,
and that's not the church. I feel like that's a lie, because
that's like saying you're Muslim, you don't believe in the Quran. It's like you're saying you're Jewish, you don't believe in God, or the Black the Torah. You don't believe in any of that shit. It doesn't because you're some weird atheist version of it then.
Or if you say that you're Buddhist, but you don't believe there was the Buddha, but then there's nothing to.
Then you just kind of doing a bare bones version, a weird,
There's nothing to really believe then if there isn't a person that you're learning from or looking up to in some sort of way. So it's.
I guess there's probably Christians out there though that don't believe in Jesus and maybe think everything's. I don't know, but they're not. They don't identify as Christians. They just are I read the Bible and I think it maybe happening, but. Or everything is just kind of
or maybe just live.
Maybe a lot of people think that Bible is just parables and tales and metaphors for your body and mind and spirituality and stuff like that, and just how to be a better person.
But then I don't think you'd consider yourself Christian, because.
No, but you read the Bible and you know about Christianity, so saying those people just know what Satanism is and they're just taking and picking and choosing what they like out of it, maybe, but. I don't know too much about that.
As a concept. I don't know. I think that whole thing is very strange, and I think that the satanic influence in this whole thing is also very strange.
Well,
And
the name Balenciaga translates from Latin. Baal is king, right? And Baal is like an idol in the Bible and stuff like that. And he's like a idolistic god. And a lot of people, I saw like shit where people were saying, "Oh, Baal isn't Satan necessarily, but he can be like depicted as Satan, or it's like sometimes used as kind of like a co-opt, or like they have a lot of similarities and stuff like that. But he's definitely like a false idol in the Bible and stuff like that. And like it's like talked about they should worship him and shit like that, like Baal the bull god or whatever. But yeah, and he's connected to Malik, and Malik's the owl god and shit like that, and like Satan, like Lucifer or whatever. But I also saw some shit that was because they're Satanists and they want people. They actually wanted this kind of to be exposed, and they wanted people to be saying the name of like all that kind of shit, because they like names and words that bring power and shit like that, and like everybody kind of like repeating it, like even if it's negative energy towards it, it's just like still energy towards it building up, kind of like that. You know, publicity is bad publicity in a sense, you know, like, and like, because they're not getting canceled by anybody or anything. Like celebrities are still posting with them and shit, like, or like still their photos and their clothes and shit like that, and they're not like stopping. Like, they're not canceling it like they should.
And the company Kering owns Balenciaga, but they also own Gucci, Saint Laurent, Bottega Veneta, Alexander McQueen, and a bunch of other brands too. So
yeah, like all the high fashion shit.
Yeah,
that man became like one of the richest people in the world over the pandemic, because people were just not spending their stimulus checks on like Balenciaga or like bags and shit like that. Yeah. Like it was like fucking stupid Gucci bags.
I did a lot of research on this guy, but anyways, how does this connect to Jeffrey Epstein, Balenciaga? Well, so the owner of Kering, who's the company that owns these companies, is named Francois Henry Pinault. He was actually married to Salma Hayek. Or maybe he's still
married. Yeah, they're still married, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he actually is he's a member of the board of Christie's, an auction house. And it was exposed that Epstein frequently bought art from there. I think it was hundreds of millions of dollars worth of art and stuff from there, which could have also been money laundering.
Well, yeah, it is 100%, and just like a tax, like a lot of shit like that is just like where they're changing it around so they don't have to pay taxes on something. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, like artwork. I think that's like why a lot of famous people like artwork isn't taxed. There's something like it's not taxed in your revenue or something like that if you have that.
Yeah. And so Epstein had recruited girls from art auctions, artists. There was a victim in the documentary who spoke about how that's how she was recruited. So, it's not hard to come to the conclusion that these two people who are both involved with this place, they're both high profile, they both work with high profile people, are involved together, especially when we see these other things coming up about pedophilia in their work, and that's what Jeffrey Epstein did. So it's like, I don't think it's that out there to draw that conclusion that they were involved in some way, and that maybe Francois went to the island or whatever. It's a huge group of people who are involved in this. And some people take it too far and they think that everybody who is like a celebrity, or they're rich, or they're in the government, they're all pedophiles and involved in this. I don't think that's true, because I think, like, as a general concept, it's disgusting. Like, and there has to be, the majority of people think that this is disgusting just, like, off of principle, like.
You would think so, but, like, I don't know, people kind of get indoctrinated into shit after a while, and maybe they have, like, I'm sure they have, like, blackmail shit on every single, like, person that rises to an influential power. I think they definitely don't tell people, or, like, they can keep people on the outside, or, like, you know, like, that like comedians maybe more so. Like, I feel like a lot of comedians aren't really like let into any of that, because those type of people would be the type of people that be like, what the fuck, right? Like, they still have some type of like normal head, you know, like a lot of comedians and shit.
But anyways, I cannot stress enough that we're just normal people. Like, and it's weird that I have to say this. It's weird that I feel like me just presenting actual facts on here people are going to think I'm crazy. That's weird because we are normal people. We work normal jobs. We care about our health and how we can better ourselves. Like, we're not just these like people in like our parents' basement, like online all the time, like not doing anything. That's not who we are. We're not crazy. We just
They're all reptilians. You can't trust any of them. They're going to lick your soul and then shed their skin.
Oh, wow. That
Got
was a wild one.
That's
Lick
it.
your soul.
Mic drop.
But yeah, it's so crazy though with this kind of thing. Like, you can't talk about it without being labeled as crazy, and it's like, who does that benefit? You have to ask yourself that.
Right,
Who
it's
does
always
it benefit?
not having conversations about stuff.
Yeah. Who does it benefit to label somebody as crazy over presenting facts? Because right now I'm looking at my screen.
Right, it doesn't not benefit any regular person. It only benefits the elites more. Like, if somebody's like, hey, those guys are bad, they might be doing something bad or malicious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some random person being like, oh, yeah, they're not, is like, bro, what do you, like, it's like this part of celebrity worship almost, right? Like,
yeah,
it's like you're repping for these dudes that are billionaires. You're, like, broke compared to them. And you're, like, paycheck to paycheck or, like, can't even, like, right, like, buy a house anymore.
And
like,
you
it's,
wonder why.
And you're like, hey, no, they're good. They're doing their thing. You don't have to worry about it. It's like, no, you should be looking at them and looking into what they have because the balances and checks we have in our system are part of our corrupt system, and it's like part of it, and it's intertwined, and it's like there's so many pitfalls in all of it.
Funded by this, like, it's so wild, and it's like it's very healthy, I think, to question the government and to question these elite people and these groups, because then you can go to bed at the end of the day saying, okay, I'm going to do my own research into things, and I'm going to care about my own health, and I'm going to understand that there are people who have motives that are against me, who are in power. There's people who don't want us to be healthy mentally and physically. They don't want us to live comfortably, have enough money. They want to keep us down. But that's not to say, like, oh, I hate the world, I hate life. That's just being realistic and understanding that we can only do what we can do, and all we can do is just try to maintain our own morals and do the best we can.
But also, like, not be ignorant to, like, overarching themes or just, like, information out there because the BBC or because the CNBC or because Fox isn't posting it. Like, it's like, oh, maybe that doesn't mean it's not necessarily valid information. It's like you just gotta go through it like any other reference or any other thing where you go through all the checks and you make sure that there's other sources that can validate it itself that are separated and they're also trusted. Like, and there's also, like, it's like, okay, yeah, you have one source from long ago, maybe that's not true, but it's like if you have several sources over time and stuff like that, then that kind of stuff you can just start to rule out, right? Because I feel like there's too much that is in conspiracies that could be out of that conspiracy theory realm, where it's just like, no, this actually happened. They did this, and it's not a conspiracy theory anymore because we know they did this.
It's true, but it's still, you're crazy for believing things and having these conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
When it's not believing conspiracy theories, it's looking at actual history and evidence and not being, like, ignorant to it, looking at the actual evidence and saying, oh, yeah, that's definitely what's going on with this.
Yeah, well, you can see, like, there's ones that have been declassified from, like the 1940s and 50s, it's, like, from the FBI, like, all the shit that they did and, like, all the operations that they ran, and it's, like, crazy that they did these, and people will be like, oh, it's not the same guys doing it. So, yeah, obviously not the same guys, but these positions of power and organizations of power, just like I've seen several videos where it's like, oh, the Boy Scouts, it's like wasn't built to be a pedophilic organization, but it's pedophiles will they'll what's it called, like, infiltrate it, because it's a good opportunity and rise to the top and then turn it into that kind of thing. like a lot of the time. If not, it is built like originally, and it is like malicious attempts. But I don't think everything would be.
I think it's better for every person to understand that there is a lot of evil people, and a lot of these evil people are doing very well for themselves. So you need to protect yourself from that in a certain way, like you were saying about like very overly processed foods and stuff. That the tobacco companies actually bought these companies to make these
after they got like banned
foods.
And shit, all like this shit came out that tobacco use is bad, so they banned all these like craft and shit and all that kind of shit like stuff.
Yeah, and then makes
just added
it
sugar
more
to make it more addictive. So yeah, all that kind of thing.
So then you get addicted to processed foods, and there's like a ton of. We've been using this app called Yuka, where you can see the harmful ingredients in your food.
Or just
there's a ton of like very harmful additives that there is significant evidence are very harmful for people.
It's
still
mostly
legal.
all in processed foods, and then with natural foods you got to worry about like herbicides or pesticides. So then that's where organic can come in, but
and, like,
even then that stuff's gonna get in. Yeah.
Makeup has a lot of harmful chemicals because it's not regulated. Neither are cleaning chemicals. Like they can put anything on the bottle. It doesn't matter what's in it. It's not regulated.
Well, as long as they like put what the ingredient is in there or something, like.
Well, they can say it's bleach and nobody's checking.
Right, for sure.
Like no, they can put anything they want in these cleaning sprays. They can put whatever. There just isn't regulations, and that's to benefit the elite. So, and that's just one example of like you need to understand.
Well, because they just want you dumb and they just want you controlled, but they also give it's like another reason why they might put this out there other than like, oh, they're trying to do it like Voldemort style, like it gives the name power or whatever when everybody says it and everybody's mentioning.
Yeah.
But it's also they're trying to get karma for this, and they're like trying to be able to still not like go to hell or whatever it is that they believe in, and like they still want like good karma, so they give people the opportunity to rise up or whatever, like get up in their ranks and stuff like that, like by giving you this information in a veiled way or like in a subconscious way through like imagery or something like that in a show, or sometimes they'll just blatantly tell you, or like there's so many times where they just like blatantly tell you, and it's like, why is Ellen telling us in this Sandra Bullock interview that Sandra Bullock's putting Korean like foreskin on her face for like to get youthful look, like she gets it injected in her face, Korean foreskin, and she's like from babies, and it's like
that's not a lie.
Well, no, that's literally like I'll put the interview in there. It's like literally like just like on the Ellen show, and she's like they're like laughing about it and stuff, and it's like, why would they put that in there? And it's like because they're trying to get karma and like wake people up that are willing to be like woken up to it and understand it and conceptualize it, because those are the people that use their brain, and like being smart in your brain is like the way to get up in the world, and it also has to do with like a higher spiritual self. Because you're more like aware, and you're not just like trying to search for your like, or you're not just like trapped in your like everyday conscious,
And it's like, in that kind of thing too. If you talk about this kind of thing, you're crazy. That's how people see you. They think you're crazy.
Well, I feel like there's definitely like getting away from that more, and like after the pandemic, I feel like some people are kind of been faced with the facts like after the pandemic that they can't.
Yeah.
They're like trying to coincide it, but like you ask anybody, it's like now a lot of people are like they regret getting a vaccine, or they are like why did they do, or like what they said didn't make sense, or what they were saying was lies in the beginning. Turned out they later were like, yeah, that's true. It doesn't actually stop transmission. It only stops symptoms or whatever, right? Like, and there's like, what the fuck? So all the people that are vaccinated walking around are still transferring it to, like.
And like, there's even been a trend
we're gonna
on
get the
TikTok.
fact checkers on here.
Yeah.
Go from this information.
There's been a trend on TikTok where people have been saying like, there's like a sound, and it's like, when people say the government wouldn't do that, yes, they would, and people are just like talking about like all these actual conspiracies the government has committed, like how they only plant male trees in cities because they don't want people to get free food from the female trees that are in cities, and it messes us up because we get more allergies because there's pollen everywhere, and that's what actually causes allergies and all this stuff.
Right, just an excess amount of pollen compared to like a normal amount that would be going back into the environment.
And it's like an actual TikTok trend. So although I am hopeful that more people are being open-minded, this can be, it's so strange how it's under a guise of you are closed-minded in a certain way for believing in conspiracy theories because you're grouped in with the alt-right, which may be more
Well, I think it's just that kind of what I was mentioning at the beginning. Like, there's so many like conspiracy theories that are either just like random people thinking them up and throwing them out there, and they just have too much circumstantial evidence, or like there's just something that correlates, and then they go off that basis, or it's a government plan story to distract from the actual like another conspiracy that's like. Right, like there'll be like 15 competing conspiracies for like one idea, right? So it's like, how can you choose? How do you know? But I think you just gotta.
That's not proven either. Yeah. Like the government might not be.
Well, But
we can look at that and we can say,
or like private companies, where like an oil company could definitely do that, or something.
There's no evidence of this, but there is motive.
Well, there's evidence of it.
You need to establish a motive.
I got some evidence. They literally will like fund studies, like the milk and like dairy producers. They'll like fund studies to make sure it's like showing that you need milk and stuff like that, and like in your diet, and like when it's been going down recent years, and like they fund studies and like pay scientists to literally like come up with a specific like set of results, like. Like they conduct a...
is there actual evidence of those transactions, though? Or is it
mostly no. Well, that's how it works, though.
Establishing motive. Because that's a different thing. You can establish a motive, you understand that these people have
no, but I'm not saying that they're paid off. I'm just saying that, like, they hired these people to do a study. They did the study, but the study was, like... And they'll use those studies as, like, a reason to... Oh, milk is good because of this or something like that. Like 70% of like they have just misleading studies and stuff like that they can put out there. So I think that kind of like correlates that, like, I don't know, they can add misleading stuff in, like just like misleading news stories or like news stories that have like a really strange title where they just change the thing to give you a different perception on what you're actually like trying to find or the truth.
Yeah, and the way that a lot of times online it becomes like an echo chamber. Like if you go on, the algorithm will track your beliefs and it will show you like
because it just wants to give you more whatever dopamine.
Yeah, it doesn't want you to look into other views and hear other people out, and it's turning us into a closed-minded society and under the guise of being an open-minded society. Because nowadays it's like we're accepting of gay people, which is obviously that's amazing. That's not wrong at all. That's great. And trans people and
America.
And more awareness on racism and all these things.
US and
so that makes people think that automatically that's being open-minded because I'm okay
right,
with
they kind of get a free. They're like, I get a free pass, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm open-minded because that's what being open-minded is. It's being accepting of other people, but it's not being accepting of other views. It's not listening to other people because I think that's what we need to do. Like, you need to listen to other people to either affirm your own beliefs or challenge your own beliefs, and you need to be open to that. You need to be open to changing your mind and accepting new information that might go against what you believe. And that's like our society, I think, is just going further and further away from that. Or maybe it's stayed the same, but we're certainly are not open-minded. And I think
I think that's you definitely just see more of that because that's kind of like the loudest people are going to be the craziest people, like kind of on each end. Like the moderates that are kind of just like watching everything aren't really going to be the ones that are going to like tweeting about a lot of stuff because Or like they're just like, I don't know, like usually like normal people, like they don't care that much, or they're just focused on their lives and stuff like that.
But then
Or
I
they just
also
don't
feel
have
like
Twitter and they're just not in that kind of like
there are
sphere.
a
So I
lot
think
of,
there's just crazies that you see like in any group though.
yeah, but I think that there are a lot of other just normal people like us who
That's what I'm
believe
saying,
in
like
these
moderates that
conspiracies.
just like moderates, yeah, like people
Yeah.
in the middle.
Who are able to believe in conspiracy theories, and some of them be like, yeah, that's fucking crazy. Like get that shit away from me. I don't want to hear about that. Like reptilians and stuff. And then some of them
That's
are like
that's
that
I think
actually
that's
makes
the
some
thing though.
sense.
Like you don't have to be like what the fuck to something though. Like you can just be like, oh, this isn't something that like apply. Like I don't know. Like you don't ever have to be like, oh, like this is where that's where you kind of get back into like, oh, this is crazy. This is crazy. You don't want that. You want to have. It's just like you take this and you objectively look at this, and if it doesn't like hold up or like have the facts, or you can objectively tie it to something else where you can like study that part of that or like look into that part further, which might have a link to it and shed some more light on it, then there's really like I think you just gotta like look at every like theory you come across or anything like that objectively, and then just never like write it off, right? Like there's always like ways you can be like, oh yeah, that makes sense because of that, because of like just like you had that link with like, oh, like he bought all this art at the auction house, all this like weird creepy like pedophilic art or like weird art of the elites, and that auction house was run by Karen and stuff like that, and right,
Yeah.
like so it's like if you heard those separately, might not, but it's like, oh yeah, no, they are connected, which I think a lot of people are maybe afraid of doing that, like connecting the dots to their
There
like.
is like grasping at straws, like
Mhm.
that. I definitely had to grasp at straws with that one. Not necessarily, but I had to do some digging a lot of digging to make that connection and see the files from the art that Jeffrey was buying and what this other guy, his other business endeavors, and look into this auction house and look up.
Right, but that's how they want it too.
Yeah,
right? They want it hard to find. Even like the biggest family in America, or like one of the top 5 families in the world, like richest families, they supply 75% of the food production in America, and like nobody knows their name because that's literally like their thing is like they don't want people to know their name, and like so they just have zero marketing on their actual company, and but like have just like this insane influence and power on the industrial farming market.
But okay, I hope everybody enjoy this episode.
Yeah, for sure. It was it's a little crazy. Yeah.
I hope nobody thinks that we're crazy, but
I don't think anybody would think it's because we're not saying anything like.
I'm just looking
it's
at
just,
facts.
it's just yeah. I was gonna say it's all real facts, and it's not like we're saying anything like.
Yeah.
Oh,
it
could be this. They're doing this for this. It's like no, this is what's happened, and this is
what
like yeah.
We can connect things together.
But
These
we're not like
motives.
elaborating or anything. So I think it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And it's the same conclusion other people would reach if they were just presented the same information anyways.
Yeah.
Like it's like a rational explanation, and because it's like, oh yeah, that's really happened, and you can't discount the real events and stuff like that happen. So
a lot of people do though. A lot of people.
Well, I think that's just
it's
just blissfully ignorance is bliss, right? You just like you want to live in ignorance to not be woken up to that kind of thing because it's just too much. People just want to go living on their lives, kind of like COVID, right? Like people are just like whatever we can to get back to normal, right? Like let's do it, like we'll wear whatever, like do whatever, and it's like at a certain point, yeah, that kind of like starts to like not work, and like or like a lot of people will go on with it, but like it doesn't really work.
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, people want to be comfortable, and people want to think that they know what's going on, and that, yeah. And I'll end this. I'll not end this, but I'll just say, don't fear the truth. That's what I tell myself every time I have a spiritual experience. Just don't fear the truth. It's always okay. Even if it's not what you want to believe, even if it's not what you want to think. Don't fear the truth.
Well, just be open and stuff, and never be like, oh, I don't think anybody can ever be 100% sure on anything.
Yeah.
But you can be 90% sure on something and 40% sure on something. Like, or like you can you can know what's something you shouldn't put like all your belief and trust in, and
Yeah.
other things that it's like, okay, this is reliable information, even though it's like a lot of this stuff is just very confusing and they make it that way, so it's hard to navigate. And
I'll say learn how to look into your sources, learn how to properly read things through, and yeah, like we're educated people. I've been to university. You have as well. Well,
yeah,
I don't know what you
college
call that,
something.
but yeah, and also a lot of this stuff does attract uneducated people, like the very crazy conspiracies, because you do need to learn.
Well, I don't think
how to look
this
into
isn't
your
even
sources.
crazy stuff because it's
This
sort of like a
isn't,
Netflix documentary, and like this is
Yeah. But I will say, like, look into your sources for everything. Make sure it's reliable. Make sure that information
and
and gathering that information is being conducted properly, which if you don't have a proper education, it might be hard to differentiate, but definitely just take things with a grain of salt if you don't have education on how to look into sources and that kind of thing.
yeah, definitely Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself, and
Yeah, that's that's
we'll
pretty much
also
a fact
maybe
at this
add
point.
or like look at the flight list and just shock yourself to see who's on it. Because once you see who's on it, you're like, whoa, that person, like